The first time my parents showed up at my front door unannounced, there was a news article open on the laptop behind me with my face under the headline, Local Founders Startup Valued at $4.5 million after seed round. I was still barefoot, still in the same leggings I'd been wearing for 3 days while we sprinted toward that deal when the doorbell rang. When I opened it, they were both standing there, dressed nicer than they ever were for me when I was a kid. My mother held a bakery box like a peace offering. My father clutched a printout of the article. "Lena," my mom said, smoothing her hair even though there was no one behind me to impress, "we thought we'd drop by to congratulate you." She said it like they lived 10 minutes away, not in a different city. My dad lifted the paper, shaking it a little. "We had no idea it was this big," he said. $4.5 million. That's real money." He sounded stunned. I leaned against the doorframe and let my eyes trace the lines on their faces, the same faces that had barely moved when I'd waved my college acceptance letter in front of them 7 years earlier. Back then, I'd stood in their kitchen, cheeks flushed, envelope shaking in my hand. "I got in," I'd said, "to Westbrook, full ride." My mother had stirred a pot of soup without looking up. "That's nice," she'd said. "Make sure you take the trash out after dinner." My father had muttered something about wasting time on a degree that won't pay, then asked if I could clock more hours at the gas station to help with the electric bill. No hug, no "we're proud of you," just a shrug and a reminder that in their world, my ambitions were chores to be done after real life. Now they were on my doorstep, eyes darting past me to the open-plan office inside my tiny townhouse, where mismatched desks and second-hand monitors held the skeleton of the company they suddenly cared about. "Can we come in?" my mom asked. "We brought Take to celebrate your success." She stumbled on the word like it was new in her mouth. It would have been funny if it hadn't hurt so much. Because here's the thing. I didn't build a $4.5 million tech startup to make my parents line up at my door. I built it because no one was going to save me if I didn't. But seeing them there, holding a box with candles and a printout of the thing they'd once dismissed as a phase, did something to me. It made every ignored email, every snide comment about my little computer classes, every time they'd told me to be realistic, line up in my memory like a slideshow. And it made me realize this story wasn't just about them finally seeing me. It was about how I learned to see myself long before they ever rang my bell. I grew up in a house where getting a job was what you did instead of dreaming. My dad worked construction when there was work, odd jobs when there wasn't. My mom cleaned offices at night and watched other people's kids during the day. We weren't starving, but we were never more than 2 bad weeks away from real trouble. When I was 14, a school counselor asked what I wanted to do after graduation. "I don't know," I said. "Maybe college? Something with computers. I like figuring out how things work." She smiled. "Then you should look at programs," she said. "You're good at math. You're organized. You could do something like systems design or software engineering." I went home that night, buzzing. At dinner, between my dad complaining about his boss and my mom asking if I could watch my little brother on Saturday, I said, "Mrs. Patel thinks I should apply to Westbrook. They have a great computer science program. Their website says they have scholarships." My mom snorted into her mashed potatoes. "Scholarships," she repeated, "for kids with parents who make connections, not for people like us. You need to be thinking about getting a job, Lena. Help out around here." My dad didn't even look up from his plate. "You're not cut out for that kind of thing," he said. "You like art, helping in the office. Be realistic. Be realistic." It became the refrain of my teenage years. When I stayed up late watching programming tutorials on YouTube instead of TV, be realistic. When I brought home a flyer for a summer coding camp that cost more than our rent, be realistic. When I asked if we could go visit a college campus one weekend, be realistic. So I learned to be realistically ambitious in secret. I did my homework. I worked part-time at the gas station at the edge of town, stocking shelves and learning how to run the ancient point-of-sale system. When my shift was slow, I'd tinker with the back office computer, teaching myself Excel, then Access, then the basics of writing simple scripts to automate the owner's weekly reports. He'd never asked. But when he realized I'd shaved 3 hours off his Sunday paperwork, he gave me an extra $50. "You've got a brain," he said. "Don't waste it." I made a deal with myself. If I could get into a good program with enough scholarship money that my parents' contribution was zero, I wouldn't ask them for permission. I'd just go. I spent my junior and senior year doing everything I could to make that possible. Volunteering, coding clubs, free online courses. My parents didn't really pay attention. As long as my grades weren't slipping and I was still clocking shifts, they assumed my computer stuff was a harmless hobby. The day the Westbrook letter came, I stood on the porch and stared at the envelope with the crest printed in blue. My hands shook when I opened it. "Dear Lena," it said, "we are pleased to offer you admission." I screamed. My little brother came running. "What happened?" he asked. "I got in," I said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Full tuition scholarship. I'm going to college." He hugged me. It was the only congratulations I got in that moment. When my parents came home, I laid the letter on the kitchen table like an offering. My mother scanned it. 4 years, she said. That's a long time to not be earning. "It's paid for," I said. "They're covering tuition. I can work for living expenses. This is huge." My dad frowned. "What's the degree?" he asked. "Computer science," I said, "with maybe a minor in business." He snorted. "You know how many people get those degrees and end up working at coffee shops," he said. "If you're going to school, at least do something useful. Nursing, accounting, something steady." "It is useful," I said, heat rising in my chest. "Tech is—" "Don't argue," my mother cut in. "We can't help you with anything. No rent, no food. We barely get by as it is. If you go, you're on your own. Don't come crying to us when it's harder than you think." They moved on. Talked about my dad's shift schedule, what to pack in my brother's lunch. The dream I'd worked for quietly evaporated in the steam from the spaghetti pot. I went to my room and lay on my back, acceptance letter on my chest. For about an hour, I considered ripping it up. Then I thought about the gas station's back office, about the thrill I got when my little script printed a clean report, about the idea of spending 4 years learning how to build more of that instead of stocking shelves forever. I put the letter in a folder. I Googled Westbrook work study and cheapest dorms. If my parents weren't going to be in my corner, I decided, I just have to learn to stand alone in it. College was nothing like my parents imagined. They pictured lecture halls and parties, and their daughter getting ideas above her station. What it actually looked like was me dragging myself half asleep to an 8 a.m. data structures class, then sprinting across campus to my work-study job in the IT help desk. I learned as much in that basement office as I did in lectures. People came in with broken laptops, corrupted files, and vague requests like, "Make this work." I became the translator between human panic and machine logic, between the kid who'd lost their thesis and the server that might still have a backup. It turned out I was good at that, really good. One day, a grad student came in complaining about the clunky scheduling system the department used. "It crashes every time more than 10 people log in," she said, dropping a stack of printouts on my desk. I begged them to fix it. They said they don't have the budget, so we're stuck. I took a look. The tool was ancient. I thought I could build something better than this in a semester. Not alone, but with help. I put up a flyer. Looking for devs, designers interested in building a simple, better scheduling tool. No pay, credit, experience, pizza. 4 people showed up at that first meeting in the dorm lounge. One of them was Mateo, a shy guy with messy hair and a brain that saw systems like maps. We hacked together a prototype. It wasn't pretty. It was fast. It worked. The department used it for a pilot. Then another department asked if we could adapt it. Then a neighboring college reached out. By junior year, Mateo and I were spending more time on our side project than on homework. At some point, we realized we weren't just building a tool. We were building a product. When I called my mom and tried to explain that we were thinking of turning it into a real company, she sighed. "Lena, this is ridiculous," she said. "You're almost done with school. Get a real job, benefits. Stop chasing apps." "To be fair, it's more like a platform," I said weakly. She didn't laugh. "You're going to end up back here," she said. "No savings, no plan. You can't just make things up and call it work." I stopped expecting them to understand. I finished my degree. I took a job at a mid-sized tech firm in the city to pay rent and health insurance. On nights and weekends, Mateo and I kept building. We incorporated. We called it Slotly. It was terrible and perfect. We made every mistake you can imagine. Undercharged, overpromised, said yes to features we had no business tackling. We also, quietly, landed real clients. A chain of tutoring centers, a small hospital network, a conference organizer who hated spreadsheets. At family gatherings, when people asked what I was doing, my mother would say, "She still works with computers," and change the subject. When someone pressed, I'd say, "I do product management for a software company." And maybe, if they looked interested, "And I'm building a startup on the side." Mostly they weren't. "You'll settle down eventually," my aunt would say. "Everyone grows out of their phase." Their phase. Like it was a fashion choice. Not the thing that made my heart beat faster in a way nothing else did. I stopped bringing it up. Let them brag about my cousin's promotion at the insurance firm, about my brother's apprenticeship, about anything but the part of me that didn't fit their script. What they didn't know was that while they were rolling their eyes at my little tech thing, people who actually understood numbers were paying attention. Mentors, early customers, an angel investor who'd once been in my CS 101 class and remembered how I'd stayed after to help him with pointers. They saw potential, even if my family didn't. The year before everything changed nearly broke me. Slotly had outgrown side project status. We had paying customers. Too many for two people working nights and weekends. Too few to support salaries. We were stuck in the worst of both worlds, burning out at our day jobs, too terrified to quit. We applied to accelerators. Most said no. Too early, crowded space, come back with more traction. We almost shut it down. Then a strange thing happened. A small but influential blog wrote about us. "Two nobodies," the headline joked, "are quietly fixing one of the most annoying problems in academia." Sign-ups spiked. Within a month, we had 10 more schools using Slotly on trial. Within 3, a mid-tier accelerator accepted us. They offered a small investment in exchange for equity, office space, and mentorship. It wasn't glamorous. The office was a converted warehouse with bad coffee, but it was a bet. From someone who wasn't me or Mateo. I quit my day job. Mateo did too. "You're insane," my mother said when I told her. "Walking away from a stable paycheck in this economy for some app nobody's heard of?" "People have heard of it," I said. "That's kind of the point." "What are you going to do for health insurance?" she demanded. "The accelerator has a plan," I said. She scoffed. "Plans change," she said. "You'll be back, mark my words." My dad was more blunt. "You're throwing away a sure thing for a fantasy," he said. "You think you're the next Zuckerberg? Get over yourself." I headed to the accelerator anyway, with my suitcase and my secondhand laptop and a stomach full of nerves. The program was 3 months of compressed chaos. Workshops, mentor meetings, pitch practice, customer calls. We slept on futons. We ate too much takeout. We wrote more code in 1 quarter than we had in the previous year. We also did something I never really expected. We grew. By the end of the program, we had over 50 paying organizations using Slotly. Churn was low. Referrals were high. People were finding us without us hunting them down. We had, in the eyes of investors, traction. On demo day, under bright lights in a crowded room, I walked on stage in a borrowed blazer and pitched our company in 6 minutes. I talked about double-booked rooms and wasted hours, about administrators drowning in email chains, about how one school had cut their scheduling time by 40% using our tool. Investors nodded, took notes, some smiled, a few checked their phones. Later, back in the noisy room, people from funds I'd only read about came up to talk. How big can this get? What's your retention like? Who owns the IP? I answered, calm on the outside, screaming inside. 3 months after demo day, we closed a seed round, $4.5 million. Not in our pockets, in the company. Enough to hire a small team, enough to stop choosing between paying ourselves and paying AWS. Enough to show up on the radar of people who read tech news like sports stats. One of those people was my mother's neighbor. She saw the article. She sent my mom the link with 10 exclamation points. Is this your Lena? That's how my parents found out their daughter, the one whose little computer thing they'd dismissed for years, was suddenly, in their words, worth millions. They didn't understand valuations. They thought the number meant money in my personal bank account. To be fair, part of me wished it did. But even if it didn't, it meant something that had always been invisible to them. My work now had a price tag they recognized. And people who had ignored my acceptance letter and my degree and my first job suddenly cared very much about what I was doing. Enough to drive 3 hours, bakery box in hand, to stand awkwardly on my porch and ask to come in. I let them. I stepped aside and watched my parents cross the threshold like they were entering a museum. Their eyes darted around the open space I called an office. 4 desks, 3 mismatched chairs, a whiteboard covered in boxes and arrows, a wall of sticky notes under the heading User Feedback. This is nice, my mom said, which in her language could mean anything from I'm impressed to this is a disaster. My dad pointed at a monitor. All this for scheduling? He asked. Mateo, who had been in the kitchen making coffee, poked his head out. Scheduling and resource optimization, he said. Hi, you must be Lena's parents. They shook his hand like he was a celebrity. So you're the partner? My mother said. We've heard so much about you. That was a lie. They'd barely remembered his name when I talked about him before. We sat at the small table I used for both meals and meetings. My mother opened the bakery box. Strawberry cake, she said. Your favorite. We thought we'd, celebrate your big funding. She said the word like she was trying it on. My dad cleared his throat. We didn't realize it was serious, he said. All this, the articles, the money, people at church are talking about it. There it was, the real metric. Not my pride, not my sleepless nights, not the schools and clinics using our product. Their friends at church. Oh, I said, sipping my coffee. Yes, my mom said. Linda's son said he saw you on some startup website, and then that neighbor sent the article. 4.5 million, Lena. Why didn't you tell us? We could have helped. My laugh came out sharper than I meant it to. Helped how? I asked. By telling me to stop, like you did when I got into Westbrook, or when I started this? She winced. We were just worried, she said. We didn't want you to get your hopes up. Most people who try things like this fail. So you decided I would be one of them, I said, and treated my work like a hobby? My father bristled. We just wanted you to be realistic, he said. For all we knew, you were playing around with apps in your bedroom. We didn't think it would turn into this. He gestured vaguely. That's because you never asked, I said. Any time I tried to talk about it, you shut me down. You told me to get a real job. They were quiet for a moment. Then my mother leaned forward. Well, she said, brightening in that brittle way she had when she wanted to change the subject, we know now, and we are very proud of you. Right, Tom? My father nodded. Of course, he said. We always knew you were smart. No, you didn't, I thought. You knew I was stubborn. You didn't know I was right. They started asking questions then. Not the ones I'd always wanted. Not, how does it work? Or what problem are you solving? Or how did you build this? Questions like, so, are you rich now? And do you get a salary? And are you going to buy a house? Then, more pointedly, do you need any partners? Your uncle's business has been struggling. Maybe you could invest, help out the family. There it was, the safety net script. rewritten with a different number. When my trust fund had been theoretical, they'd tried to fold it into the family budget. Now that my company had a number they recognized, they wanted in. I looked at them. At the people who had told me to my face that college was a waste of time, who had refused to come to my graduation because my brother had a soccer game, who had once said, in front of me, "She'll end up back here anyway. Kids like her always do." Part of me wanted to slam the door. Part of me wanted to let them bask in it, to say, "See, you were wrong." What I did instead was somewhere in between. "If you want a tour," I said, "I'm happy to show you around. If you want to understand what we do, I'll explain. But I'm not your ATM. This money isn't mine to hand out. It's the company's. It belongs to the work." If you've ever been the one in your family who got out, who went to school, who started something, who dared to want more than survival, you know this moment. The one where the people who doubted you line up at your metaphorical door when the thing you built finally shines bright enough to reach their world. It's tempting to either shut them out completely or throw everything open and let them trample through. Both extremes feel like power. Neither actually is. Real power, I was learning, was in setting terms. In saying, you can come this far, but not farther. In deciding what kind of access the people who ignored your acceptance letters get to your success. I walked my parents through the office, showed them the whiteboard, the sticky note wall, the demo dashboard. "This is where we track active users," I said. "This is churn. This is revenue. This is the number that matters a lot more than that valuation everyone's freaking out about." They nodded, clearly out of their depth. I introduced them to the 2 engineers who happened to be there, to our customer success lead, to the intern who handled support tickets. My mother shook their hands like she was meeting celebrities. My father said, "You're all so young," like it was both compliment and concern. When they left a couple of hours later, cake box empty, my mother hugged me at the door. "I really am proud of you," she said into my hair. "I didn't understand before. I still don't, not fully, but I see something now." It wasn't the teary movie apology I'd sometimes fantasized about. There was no, "We were wrong about you all along and we're so sorry." There was just that awkward, partial acknowledgement. I see something now. It wasn't enough. Not enough to erase the past. Enough to stop me chasing more. Because somewhere between them ignoring my acceptance letter and them holding a printout of my funding announcement, I'd stopped needing their validation. I'd gotten used to measuring my worth in other ways. In bug reports closed. In churn reduced. In the school administrator who emailed, "You have no idea how much time this has saved us." In the look on Mateo's face the day we signed the term sheet. The line of people at my door that day wasn't just my parents. Later that week, old classmates reached out. "My dad saw your company on the news. Can we talk?" Random cousins messaged me. "I always knew you were smart. Any advice for getting into tech?" Even my old gas station boss called. "Saw you on the internet, huh? Still got that brain, huh?" He was the only one I invited over without hesitation. We sat at the same table as my parents had, years of oil stains behind him, and I showed him how to schedule his deliveries in Slotly. "Smart," he said. "You made your own way." That, more than the valuation, felt like closure. If you're listening to this because some part of you knows what it's like to have your big moments met with shrugs, or worse, with mockery, I'm not going to tell you it doesn't matter. It does. It hurts when the people who should be your loudest cheerleaders are the ones telling you to be realistic in a way that really means smaller. But I will tell you this, their ability to see your path has nothing to do with whether that path is worth walking. You are allowed to go to the school they don't respect. You are allowed to start the company they call a phase. You are allowed to build a life that makes sense to you, even if it never fits into a story they can brag about at church. And if, one day, those same people show up at your door because the thing you built finally has a number attached big enough for them to notice, you get to decide what happens next. You can let them in. You can keep them on the porch. You can do a messy combination of both. The point is, it's your decision, not theirs. If stories like this make you feel a little less alone in the long, weird process of outgrowing your family's idea of you, stick around. Next time, I want to tell you about a woman whose brother fired her at his CEO party, and what happened 3 hours later when she called her own board meeting. Let's just say titles on business cards don't always equal real power.